probably heard of AuDHD, but you're wondering, what does that actually mean? Is it just autism and ADHD at the same time? Well, sort of, but not really. This video will explain what AuDHD really is and why it feels so different from having just one diagnosis. Maybe you've been diagnosed with ADHD, but something about that label doesn't quite explain everything. You struggle to process things in real time. You're more socially reserved than people expect. You don't always know how to enter a conversation or exit one, and sometimes everything around you just feels too loud, too fast, and too much. You've always felt different, but you've learned how to hide it, sort of. Or maybe you've been diagnosed as autistic, and yeah, a lot of it fits. You've always had trouble with social rules, you feel things deeply, you get overwhelmed by noise, change, or too much input, but then there's the impulsivity. You interrupt people, your interests shift constantly, you feel more rigid than scattered. You want structure, but you definitely can't stick to it. You've probably wondered, am I missing something? It's very possible you're AuDHD. AuDHD means you meet the criteria for both autism and ADHD, but for the longest time, diagnostic manuals did not allow for this dual diagnosis. You were either one or the other. You were autistic or an ADHDer. Diagnostically, you could not be both. So once someone received one diagnosis, any traits that didn't quite fit were often explained away. Maybe you just had anxiety, or it was your personality, or simply how autism or ADHD reflected in you. That meant that important patterns were easy to miss, especially if your outward presentation didn't match the stereotype. So what are medical and mental health professionals actually looking for? Well, ADHD is typically described as a challenge with attention and behavioral regulation, things like impulsivity, inattention, hyperactivity, or difficulty following through. It's often linked to how the brain manages dopamine, which plays a role in motivation and focus. Autism, on the other hand, is about how someone processes and interprets the world. That includes differences in communication, sensory processing, and a strong need for predictability. A very general way of looking at this is that ADHD is about how we regulate, and autism is about how we experience and navigate our environment. These are usually treated as two separate frameworks. AuDHD blurs those lines, which is partly why a dual diagnosis can be missed. Now, if you've spent some time researching this topic, you've probably come across a few Venn diagrams where ADHD is shown on one side, autism is shown on another, and AuDHD is presented as the combination, the overlapping traits plus the traits unique to each neurotype. It looks simple, but it misses something very important. AuDHD isn't just a longer list of traits. It's not autism plus ADHD in a literal sense. What sets AuDHD apart is how the non-overlapping traits, those traits that are supposed to only belong to one neurotype, interact with each other. And often they conflict. Now, even when traits look similar, like emotional sensitivity or executive dysfunction, they often show up for different reasons and need different types of support. That's what makes AuDHD different. It's not simply about having a larger list of traits. It's about the tension between autism and ADHD occurring in the same brain. That tension or conflict creates a completely different experience. You need structure, but can't follow it. You crave stimulation, but get overstimulated. You plan obsessively, but you forget that plan as soon as you start. You need downtime, but feel restless when you try to rest. You want routine, but you fight against it constantly. This is what makes AuDHD unique. It's not the sum of two things. It's that collision of two systems. Autism and ADHD often pull in opposite directions, and it's exhausting, it's confusing, and it shapes how you experience the world in a way that neither label alone can explain. It's not double the diagnosis, it's different. And that difference matters. People with AuDHD often have a harder time getting diagnosed, a harder time getting support, and a harder time understanding their own behavior because it doesn't fit cleanly into either box. Studies even suggest that people with ADHD tend to experience more challenges across life domains, from education to employment to relationships. Not because they're less capable, but because the constant contradictions make it harder to adapt. Learning to adapt in a neurotypical world with autism or ADHD can be difficult enough, but learning to juggle both, especially when they conflict, that's something entirely different. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not imagining it, you're not being dramatic, and you're definitely not alone. You might just be ADHD. And understanding that is the first step because it allows you to finally see your life in context for the very first time and make an educated decision on how to move forward. If this resonated with you, I really want to hear from you. What does ADHD look like for you? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.